Ele é grande mesmo. I'm going to ask for a license for the Portuguese speaking people. In order to introduce my dear Sylvie, I will need to speak in Spanish because my mother said that the important things, the things that goes through our heart, we have to talk in our languages. So we are not going to have this translation for Portuguese, English and French. Is it okay? Simple. I have some words that I was thinking during the night. It is going to be short, and I'm going to try to start. We are puppeteers, animators, titerateurs, doll makers, and so on. In order to use a Cuban poet, I searched that the dreams would be more important than reality. That's why I chose to be a puppeteer. This dream is possible when a Cuban person, thanks to Anima, succeeds in participating. When Patricia, who is from Senegal, succeeds in participating as well. So many steps that were similar until to arrive here, and many of them are thanks to the work of Anima Commission. When the dreams start to be reality, the happiness is so big that it hurts. And hurt, the pain warns you that you are alive and that something is transforming in something softer. And when we are out of this week, we are never going to be the same. I insist on telling you these dangerous things. The dreams, they are short when in the same room you have together all the men, all the people that have changed my life. We are talking about the forming, and in these days, I just think about the other side of the bridge, the students. Miguel Velhinho has opened the door of the classes. Tito Lorefice has given me the principles, the push, and the brief. Fabrício Montesque, que technician of language, has left me the metaphor. Greta Bruce has given me hope. Patricia has given me an example to follow. And like these, so many others that have crossed my way as a student to be sometimes a puppeteer. And thanks to this pathway that I could be near Sylvie Baillon. To arrive until here is always thanks to the engine, which is Cyril Nicolescu, that has never abandoned us. That's thanks the the hard work of Paulo Balabi and the Wonder Woman, which is Fabiana Laza, together with the students, that they are the reason for us to be here because they are the whole. And of course, once again, Lili Bedran, because we are doing what Nini has taught us to be the best, what we could learn from what she taught. If she would get in, she would say that we would be wrong for a lot of things, for instance, the bus schedule. But what we are here today because what Nini has taught us, we have learned something, and we are going on with the students. And that's because of this that I have insisted to have the privilege to introduce Sylvie Baillon. For years, thanks to the commission, that's the start of my research. I have met Sylvie in the books, in the publications. So I met her, a teacher, a professor, a very persistent one, very resistant as well, a fighter. She's short, but with a power to understand and understand the need to go to the place where things hurt. A woman that has gone to the necessary places. The formation she has understood in a way which is not orthodox. And information is something new because for Sylvie, as well as for me, the theater must be a risky place without safe formulas. So today, I have the privilege to introduce you Sylvie Baillon, director of the company Tas de Sable, je pense verte. And I think that we are going to talk about visuality in the current days. In this current shows, and a sentence that I could not translate. When and where is the object? I will speak in French. I'm going to introduce myself because you need to know from where I am talking about. I am director d'un théâtre, d'une compagnie, excuse me, from a company. The theater is called Think Green, from a puppeteer theater in France that has a mission to structure artistic and cultural research around the puppeteer, the puppet, which develops its projects through 5 great axes: the creation and diffusion, the research and experimentation, the production and the advising, the programming, and the transmission and the formation. 5 axes to the service of the artist and to the public. My talk, my scenical writing, it's based on the puppet and the game of artists, and it integrates with other artistic disciplines like the photography, dance, video, and music on the stage. It is serving the texts that I ask from living actors, not only contemporary people, but living artists. And it happens because I am someone very sensitive to the language, to the games with words. I have a background in letters. I am self-taught, which means that are my parents that have started the company, and I believe they have passed all the positions inside the company, from author to, how can I tell you, to a technical person, director. I have never made any buildings, but that's it. I am a worker, and I participated from the National Council of the High Studies of the Puppet Art School since 2007, and I teach classes in Picardy, in the city of Arras in the northern France. I give classes in Amiens as well, northern France. To understand what I'm going to say, I came from a region in France, from the city of Amiens, which is really north of Paris, north of France, and it was one of the great theaters of First World War. It was there where the entire world came to die, to defend I don't know what, uh, but they should die there anyway. For instance, New Zealand has lost half of his soldiers there, or its soldiers there. I can understand that they have put me the question, which is the place of the imaginary and the technologies in the contemporary shows. I have written, of course, the theater, and the puppet theater is constituted in a particular relationship between text and image, in a way that the text is founder of the projects of the shows, of the spectacles. It's not the same for all the creators, and it's not demanding. But I work with living authors. From the one that is asked tests about the specific subjects. I am interested in their games with the words, and I have the chance to work with actors that are accomplices. Jean Carniard, François Chevron, and others. The dramaturgy that I can use in my work is consisted in text analysis, what has happened previously. We know the issues that we should put ourselves from a text to feed the reflection, how to feed these processes that goes from the text to the poetry and goes through other universes, and it watches something very important with me, and it's why I have this vision. When they tell me that I am a director, and they say that I do like the masters, and it's true. Even if I work with the language, about the language, I think like a painter. I think like a painter. Once I arrive to the stage, I forget, and I put myself empty. And I started to read what is happening on the stage. I have worked with scenographers, and what I search is the relationship between the actor and the puppet, the relationship with the puppets, and if I put myself in front of, I read, I see, and the interpreter is at the same time inside and outside the puppet. For a long time, we have left the Aristotelic dramaturgy in practice. It is about identifying currently in what the dramaturgy comes as the title of the work of Marion Boudier, Alice Carré, Sylvain Diaz, and Barbara Chastanier, these French people. I have the book here if you want to see, published in France, and I'm going to mention these authors now. In the search for a singular statics, we obey the rules of the theater. The companies of scenical arts still not institutionalize how the puppet arts realize in the dramaturgy a new field of reflections, and they are inside a chapter that is still missing because, and this is a book that was made as a glossary, and it is missing the dramaturgy, and this is the answer that I think it's completely interesting. One of the questions in practice and the pedagogy of the puppet theater, and I mentioned puppet theater, but I also want to say the theater through the puppet, made for the puppets. The question of the relations. For one side, you have a civic imaginarium that is summarized by the questions, which is the object of representation, and what objects I'm going to with which objects I'm going to play. What is the relationship with the space? Which space? Are these objects, they can go from a physical object, or sound, light, a phenomenon that could form a presence. The actuation of the puppet, for me, is the actuation of a presence. And which is the technique? And what technique should we use to employ this mean? If you are not understanding, please make a sign on. I'm going to base myself on my practice as an artist, particularly in relation to my last creation, and after in my pedagogist practice. We have references about the knowledge. A friend of mine, which is a musician, he works with electronic and acoustic songs, and he says when we invent new tools, we also invent new ways. He says, and this is when inventing, the new thing that we invent, and not the other way around. The new thing, before the invention of the waves, we couldn't have unknown sounds like we understand today. Today, the electroacoustic music is almost a classic. We depend from the tools we have to write the text. And each moment you have new things. We can go from the silex as from the pen, and things are not the same way it was when we started. So about the new technologies that for some people are already old technology, like the sound and register, each of the devices used, it could be electronics or video, for where these new tools are conducting us for the production. We are just in the beginning of producing 3D images, electronic images, to use these images on stage. Related to the utilization of these means as well as videos, we ask ourselves about the fascination that we have about these tools, and should always think that they could bring for our fields, for our disciplinary fields. And I'm going to be based on my last production that was necessary to have the experimentation of a puppet in an increased reality. In the origin, the fact that I was approaching a war, each 10 years I approach the war again in my productions. The situation of war works for me. So coming back, in the origin of the project, the fact that I deal with the war each 10 years, the war is a metaphor of our world, of our way to be in the world, and the way we people tells the word for us. The war is a phenomenon that puts the man in a limit situation. 1990, the show called Battlefield. It was an adaptation of a puppet from Guillaume Apollinaire, has brought the question of the issue of um, the war. The Blaise was a voluntary. He was a voluntary. The war was a physical territory, so as a way to understand what had formed them and the values that they are linked to. The bodies would go to combat and would destroy themselves, and this take us to a right reality. Peace was only of the winner. The, and I started from reality in Oceania, where you have images of the dead people that they put inside the caves, and they took off these images once a year to celebrate this. The object of this battle was the memory of the soldiers of the First World War that has happened near where I live. The dolls were made to make the sensation of sound, and at the same time, this was made with clay, with sand. In 2000, this show, patriotic scene, has approached the question of the winner ideology that once makes understand there is a war somewhere in the world, and we go in a desperate way to be in action. We don't know anymore where are the territories to be conquered. The words still have a power of invocation which is very strong. All the anti-heroes and even the disgraced ones. And what brings the peace? The puppet, non-manipulated puppet has been made in a strict sense in the paper that serves to package the meat, and the text was said in a very deep way with a Butu dancer that works in what we call the despair of the body. And I was completely shocked as a spectator. I was completely shocked by this spectacle called Botu, and I said that's what I want to do in theater. So the only puppet of this spectacle is this one that you are seeing. It's a young lady that had been victim of rape and violations, and uh, this wax doll made reference to a dark and somber winter, and today war is everywhere. But this told us like this that the war are social, economic, civic, they are intimate, they are territorial, they are financing, they are about power, psychological wars, and energetic, climatics, surgeries, chirurgicals, and the fighters are everywhere and they are anonymous. And the protagonists of this play, they talk about this endless battlefield. Today we have real geographies but virtual geographies. We have real identities, but as well virtual identities. I have seen in a museum of the First World War real uniforms. That's what you were seeing for the children of 5 years old, and they served as advertisement for the families. The families they had to admit that the parents and uncles they would go to the war. This was a shock. This shock has started the show. We are invaded by images on a daily basis, and the conflicts are presented like video games, and we are submerged in images, and sometimes are real, sometimes are fictional. And these images they have the power of fascination, which is very big, and the power of advertising. If you look at the French war minister, uh, it's it's enough to see what they have there. Today, with the drones, the notion of war has also started to be in a crisis. It's not a physical struggle anymore, different to what is told us. The exposition to the physical violence is not possible. Some fighters they make wars like a public employee and their ministers, because that's who they are. They are conducting the drones in their work schedule, their work labor day from their offices, and everyone becomes a potential target. We as well. So the peace. I'm going to to show. I ask for the texts, which is my basis of work, with Alain. I asked to Alain, is someone who I ask for the text. We have done three spectacles. The first one was feminine and masculine, the second, and out of the learning of contemplating the the old age, and the third one was about the teenager years, and we are preparing the fourth one, a psychotic child that establish friendly relations with their hunteds and a soldier from the First World War.
A soldier, all of these images of war, a physician who tries to solve the problems, the building collapses, and the whole scenery environment becomes inaccessible. The nurse has to spend time. Um, they are shut, locked away in this room. The psychosis. It's really a psychiatric problem. Some may survive these hallucinations. Other may become depressive and develop some wrong perceptions regarding life and external stimuli. And this is what we have to take from hallucinations. These are conceptual distortions. And they can affect all the senses, the light, the sound, the colors, the eyesight of the author. Alain Gomes, he therefore found this psychotic child who was living with the soldiers under a psychiatric treatment, and he used the metaphor of the issue that I would ask myself: are we facing a reality problem? All of us. Are we all becoming psychotic? The object of the performance, how do we deal with this reality problem? How do we run away from it? Where are we situated in regard to this problem? My questions regarding dramaturgy and how do we deal this reality problem on stage? How do we give image to a hallucination? Give it shape and form. The child's hallucinations, the text is therefore fragmented, but the stories that are built, for example, with music, the characters are translated by different presences. The character of the physician, they are actors, the nurses are actors, and the child, a small girl, they are all puppets, almost lifelike. And we also work the manipulation of these puppets. And regarding the hallucinations, a hallucination, is it real for the child? Is it believable by the public? But the other characters, the physician, the nurses, the little girl, they cannot see the hallucination. Could it be a ghost, a phantom of sorts? So that's why I created the hypothesis of a dream. To project 3D images of the uniforms that I had seen in a museum, in a First World War museum, on a puppet that's projected on screen. A puppet that we want to manipulate live as the text would progress. It's still not it though. I'll explain everything. In order to become the true target of this image projection, there was a technical technique that was applied to dramaturgy. We worked on the uniform of these kids from the First World War in order to go in search of the emotions that I myself felt when I saw them. That's why the puppets have no heads. It's just a image, and any attempt to try to put a head on it would totally be senseless. We have 3D images, a animated movie, a video game created by different departments of the University of Amiens, and what really mattered to these partners. It was very difficult to understand this pedagogically speaking. The image, and this was really an artistic issue that was very important. That's very important for most part of these young students. It's easy to understand though. An image is an image, but all of the images, they need to raise the question of interpretation. How do you fabricate it? What story is it telling? What is the composition, among other issues? What are the references? The illusions that an image, and a neutral image is just an illusion. The uniforms, they gave it a virtual caliber. Caliber is an interesting word that I use here because we're talking about war, but that they could realize that the projection of these 4 uniforms, the children's uniforms, the soldiers, and so on, and subsequently they used a modeling based on these 4 uniforms. This was therefore the virtual part, and subsequently it was necessary to really build the caliber itself. Okay, so that. I did put these in order, but apparently they're not anymore. So I'll just go through these later. So then it was necessary to build these calibers in their own articulation. Then a student who worked on textures, he worked with these textures based on a incredible database that fed different types of these bricks that tell the story of the creation of this virtual puppet that can be what is the puppet exactly? What is exactly is a virtual puppet? We have no sound here. That's why we can't really translate it. How do you create a projected puppet on screen? I work with these projected puppets because they will be manipulated and will therefore receive virtual projection. I started working with the caliber first, which is the general shape of the puppet that serves as a basis. I started testing the textures, lighting, and after this caliber, we started working on the skeleton because it's necessary to have a hard skeleton in the interior that will also be used in the projections. So they need to be put in the same place as this screen puppet. That was the second phase. And in the third phase, there was a research regarding the quality of the screens because we realized that to build a caliber, for example, the foam wasn't good enough in order to project the image, perhaps, or it was too hard and it was difficult to put it into projection. And then we started thinking, what if the foam would remain as a base material? We had to conduct a lot of tests in order to have this, to project this puppet. The second part was to get interested in the modeling of a soldier, more specifically the uniform of this soldier, clothing that would appear throughout the play, dead soldiers, and at the time, and based on these clothing, we started thinking about the fabrics and the textures that we needed to project on the puppet. Therefore, it was necessary to really work the issue of texture. A lot of research was done on that, and we had to think, what are the 3D tools that can help us, can help our puppet, or a real puppet, either 3D or the real puppet on stage, and the clothing should have the same movements. So that's why we needed tools that could conduct a dialogue amongst themselves. We worked on a virtual project in order to detect on stage or on the puppet what kind of position should the clothing assume. So we move the puppet with the actors, whether the puppet would move, or we could therefore detect these movements. And the problem was in regards to the positioning. We had to therefore use a camera that would enable us to detect the space and the position of the puppet. And regarding the clothing, the position we started using a kind of a sensor that enabled us to calculate the angles formed between the legs, for example, the rotation of the neck. And when we determined the position, once the cameras also detected these puppets on scene, we started to work on something that could allow us to project the caliber of that puppet. So in sum, in order to, the virtual puppet is projected on a screen and projected on 3D, and the third I wasn't able to read. And well, that sums the situation. This was the initial project. Let me just blow up these pictures again. And that's it. That's our product. There you have it, our product. You're not really sure what you're seeing, right? But this is the 3D puppet. That is the clothing of 3D puppet that's projected on a museum floor, and we still don't know anything about the image or the location. But the puppet, the virtual puppet, the clothing of the puppet is virtual. You can't see it, but it is virtual. It's about 70 centimeters, but it's very complex. The articulations were very difficult to do. The limit was identified by the scenography from the beginning. The scenography worked on the problematic of the target. It's in the center of the stage, which was very empty, and after 4 years of hard work, what I wanted to say initially is that it was very complicated to start a dialogue with a lab research with a 3D school and a theater company. That's very difficult, and that took us about a whole year so that we could more or less have it done. I would attend meetings with technologists, computer specialists, because I'm no expert on that. But the dialogue among the participants of this project was extremely complex, complicated. And after 4 years of work, the school decided to bring 2 video game systems, consoles, Nevon, which are the French drones, and I thought that was so much fun, the drones, for a puppet that had no head, because a drone the HDC Live is a immersive game software. It's an immersive game. How can I explain this? We work with a software that's called Maya. Maya doesn't move, so they had to therefore put this into another kind of tool. There was a meeting in which I participated, and then we dealt with how to deal with both softwares, how to make these two softwares dialogue. There was a problem in translation among the languages of these two softwares. Something extremely, well, interesting. And this makes people leave their comfort and origin zones. In terms of scenography, there was a relation on stage about between the screens. We practically didn't see what was being projected. The directing of the child, the puppet, until everything ruptures, literally ruptures, and then transforms the entire relation. The work of Christophe Oiseau, who is a photographer and a graphist, consisted on creating images that could be dramatized, that would show the relationship of the people in the place. This is a hospital, for example. This is the central quadrant where the child's room is situated in the center. From it was fluctuating, it was deformed, and this completes the environment of the child's environment, creating a sort of a scenery. I'll try to find this, to try to create some sort of scenery that changes and tells the whole geography of the story without being totally precise. It's the third part of the story where those who attack the hospital, and the music is part of the storytelling. The first act is covered by a drone, actually. More or less potently, and that also shoots. All of the voices are, and all the sounds were based on real sounds. And the second part, the sound tells the story, tells the evolutions of the characters, because the characters find themselves locked away in the hospital. And thanks to the softwares, there's potent softwares, we were able to conduct this project that would have been impossible manually. So this performance was created at the same time that the puppet was augmented, and it wasn't completely done, but it never will be done. I found out that issues regarding production would not allow us to repeat the object for a long time, and that was actually a challenge in the beginning. And that's also important for me as a director. And this actually makes sense, because the soldier would say, "I don't know what I'm doing here," and the child says, "I don't know what I'm doing here either," and me neither. So I have the impression that I'm not really here, and this happens to me all the time. And don't laugh, but I feel like I'm nowhere, and or perhaps that everything can vanish from one in a moment, and that's my work. I should take caution. I have to take care of every little thing, so that everything will not disappear. And I'm counting on you. There was a game that was actually developed. I would like to actually resume it. And this actually makes me a little bit anxious, but anyway. The second part. I've been following up on young artists. Oh wait, no, I have a video first. I'll show you the results.
A spot in the butterfly's wing. I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to live this anymore. Do you want to play with us? What do you play? I play with the cards. I'm going to fall down the smoke. I am an armored child. I have a soldier with me. No one could make me harm. So I have been with young artists in their professional insertion in this artistic and dramaturgical scene, and frequently I am in this position to follow their work, and it's Anne Francoise that has quoted this, talking about love and not others. The book is the dramaturgs and dramaturgy in French, and there are some moments where the formulation is extremely useful. It allows to advance. It gives basis as an opening, and some other moments it's necessary not to enunciate. things at one time. It's better to leave things to be done along the time, preserving the part of the construction that comes out of this game. This is one of the forces that I think is most that we are more excited to. You have to accept the silences, the words, the pertinence as words. The first show, I was trying to develop a way of the puppets that could answer to the metaphor. We are all of us, we are cocked in the screen. I have been after a fashion to open the puppets to the virtual techniques, how to work with avatars, and I also went for a theatrical language to provoke the penetration of the digital. And that's what I have made in the play called Human, that was based on hybridizations and mixes that get confused. I have talked to a developer, Nicolas Pierrot, that has proposed me to work with a 3D engine, and we started our research. I'm going to find the pictures. I still have time. In this history, it was necessary to call a sonographist, and it was necessary to show a current day that is with great social pressures, and we are in 2038. The virtual reality and the objectives connector are in the center of social relations. When Lewis disappears, when he connects to the hashtag humans network, so you go from physical and virtual realities that are uh, mixed, and then you use the puppets and the creation of these characters related to the puppets that he has developed for the hashtag the project hashtag humans. He prefers to talk about the virtual puppets when he puts his field of existence that inhabits the virtual, and it exists in the engine graphic 3D in real time, and it was destituted in terms of a project, a screen, or any other device of projecting images in real time. But in the end, it is a puppet. It is a form that you can manipulate by a person that produces a poetic language. The puppets of hashtag humans, they reflect over this moment between the virtual and the real. They confuse themselves, and it has taken a lot of work. Here you have the puppet controller. Besides competencies in electronics and computational skills, we have seen that we had this need. We had this need, and this is an example of digitalization. He, that's the way it is make a digitalization from a base model. Here's the first modeling that gives us this result, and in the following images it is equipped with a skeleton that could be submitted to a control or a control of movements, the opening of the mouth, the lashes that goes up, the head that turns. That's the movements we have. And in order to scan them, we have used a tool that everyone knows. I think most of you know. And this is what we are seeing is the puppet, the real puppet. The is a real puppet that exists in the show. I'm going to show you a video that is going to show what happens. There is no projection here. Over a screen, a 3D screen. It's a traditional screen, and this spectacle was made for teenagers.
2039, a message sent 20 years before to my future self. That's able to reach its destination. #humans. Emblem. Sonho 2039. We are in June 2039, and when you see this message, 20 years have gone by. You'll be 37 years old, and I suppose that my life with mom has ended, and you've become an adult woman, full of responsibilities. You probably didn't have a very strict upbringing, but no matter what happened, don't forget your roots. This allows you to advance wherever you need to go to meet your present. Take care of your parents, but take care of yourself as well. I hope that you're able to grow in your work, and that besides that, what kind of profession do you have? Did you graduate? Did you graduate high school? And I know I'm asking a lot of questions about my future profession, and I hope you found your life. I hope you found true love. Do you have any kids? Or are you still friends with your childhood friends? I hope you're very healthy, as well as the people around you. How is the world going to be in 2039? Are men still cruel amongst themselves? Is global warming has global warming made the environment disappear? Is there still battles between men and nature? I hope that you realize your dreams, you travel, you enjoy, and that be strong. Goodbye. The issue is, how can we follow up on what we can't imagine yet? Since this type of puppet, I wasn't able to imagine this kind of puppet posing questions to himself, because the object of this performance of the future, right, and when speaking about talks about a world with different presences in a given moment, like what you said, the Facebook demonstration about regarding communication in different realities, a immersive reality, a real reality. It's impressive. So we'll be going from the real world to a virtual world that goes into another world. It's a video that was launched in 2014 and it's already outdated. However, there is storytelling and it needs to be understood. The audience that enjoys this the most, they're mostly adolescents, teenagers. They like to watch this type of thing more than written things. And today the representation and the references have changed because the world has changed. The world changes. Philosophically speaking, today, we are no longer in a world. Well, okay, I'll tell you about this later, but as a pedagogical professional, I have to consider myself as an ignorant master. Jacques Rancière, a philosopher of the Emancipation, in the Ignorant Master, he talks about what Joseph mentioned. He was in charge of to sign off the French to Holland, and it was a language that he didn't understand, so he had to make the rules of the French, so he had to use a bilingual staff and speak French. And so surprisingly, he found out that without having transmitted from his knowledge, he ended up teaching a more effective French no matter the pedagogy. He concluded that the act of the master that compels another intelligence to exert, and that is independent from the possession of the knowledge. And therefore, it's possible for the ignorant to teach what he doesn't know himself. There is, in classical pedagogy, double relationship between a professor and a student, a relationship of knowing a smarter master, a relationship of wills. The master, he makes the intelligence of the student happen. He mentioned that the will itself is necessary to teaching. The will is in the experience that she poses. It's a performance project that I proposed as a director and as a puppet text that's chosen by a student based on what's imposed on him, and then I analyze it and I ask him to take stance, and then some essential questions like what is the object of your presentation, what is the title, what is your dramaturgical axis, what are the references that I can bring you, and what are they connected to, what are, based on the stance that you took, what are the objects, who do you speak to, in what space, what is the positioning of the game, why, what's is there any urgency to it, and what do you see, what do you think, what do you think about this? It's not a question of teaching my own knowledge to surpass it in a certain way, but to make the other to be able to make the other understand what he knows, to position myself as a dramatist in a creative process, and then see the coherence of the proposal and the joy of work. Because sometimes they're not always happy. Well, France at least. I'm almost done. The dramatist observes with pride, and he takes care of the coherence of the child. He avoids problems. it's a situation of Olivier Espert, a posture and tragedy in dramaturgy. How do I write as a dramatist of the process? The dramatists observe with a certain impersonal stance and looks upon the coherence of the child. He sees the object of the performance as calculated angles, and so he takes an impersonal stance, and this try to avoid some sort of accidents, which in the end will make sense, giving it a lucid perspective that transponds from the idea, and then you need to organize the dramatist. And then an expression from Jacques Lassalle, it's to rationalize the unexpected and the accidents of this empirical process. He's there to reflect in an optical sense and at the same time, intellectually speaking, the thought. It's not about satisfying yourselves with the first answers. You need to be persistent. When we study pedagogy, you know that you have to be persistent, and therefore that's where the imaginary comes in very strongly. If it's I can propose a lot of hypotheses and perhaps start with this tool or maybe another, but there are a lot of possibilities here. And I want the students to be able to rehearse on stage and make choices. Sometimes sometimes the students are not bold enough, but this posture, this behavior of ignorant master, we don't have the same references in the construction of storytelling. All of the American series have gone through this, and there was a fragmented storytelling, but also simultaneous. We don't have the same references in terms of images. The stories of the classical arts are lacking in the teachings in France. The movies that they see is not very poetic. The dramaturgies that we see in the 20th century with the abstract arts, with repetition and performances and so on, the projection on screen, projects with material, they weren't very used in theater, and some are born from dance, from the feeling, and some come from the circus in our contemporary dramaturgy. And then after this project, we are also talking about the tools in terms of particular tools such as robots or the internet. If we have the feeling that there are perhaps ways of putting things into words, well, most of our time we are still in fascination, and that's still a lot of time is still needed in order to overcome this. We think about electronical music, acoustics, that for a long time fascinated people. The experimentation with these tools is a little dangerous because they are strong. I'll need an artist who works with the internet, with computers, and he'll work on the technical perfection. I heard about a colleague who committed suicide because he was unhappy. So these are arts that really can make your head explode. And so these questions remain: the savoir-faire, the knowing how to do, the answers. The readings, sign language, the composition, directing, manipulation, dialogue, with all the other parts of the craft, light, sound, props, costumes. So we've reached the conclusion that in France, at least, there needs to be a more selection of crafts that simplify these tools that are becoming more and more complex due to economic reasons. We also see a lot of solutions. We need to help the student to identify the different functions that he interprets himself. in this process of dramaturgy and what's done on stage, what was dreamt, what was thought about, that's what I search for, the awareness where you have the need to make theater and not just be a part of some illustration, and the relationship between text and image. I dream of a teaching in art schools and a story of representation that's not a story of the art, but it could be pictorial or part of the performance. We know that the inversion of perspective is not enough because the man is emphasized in Italian theater, for example, or in the literal sense of the term, the senses. They talk about story of democracy, about deep stories of humanity, or prosaic stories regarding politicians and religious people. I would like to say that today we live a revolution, a philosophical revolution about our being in the world. And after having surpassed that world, having surpassed, well, in a certain way, that has given us the time, the story of Europe. And today, with the Anthropocene and the contesting of the man in the world today, I think about Philippe Latour that says that we have no value. We have no more. We're not more valuable than the ants. It's necessary to think, we have to question our place in this planet, on this planet, and this will give way to new representations for sure. Therefore, to conclude, regarding the object of the central space in my demand as an artist and as a pedagogical professional, I need to organically organize my work and make choices regarding direction. A work with puppetry, and there's a lot of impossible things if you don't have some sort of direction. With no direction, you can't get anything done. Thank you. We have about 15 minutes just for our debate.
And opposite what we have said, we have mentioned some examples that several times the artist has searched the engineer to produce what was necessary because of a dramaturgic choice and not because of a show. This was our tale of yesterday, and I would like you to tell your take. We have 15 minutes. About making this enlarged puppet. You have seen this puppet in the first picture. There was nothing to do. So each time I make a show, I invent the puppet. I invent what I need. And someone is going to tell me, but you're never there where you should be, where you thought you would be. You are always surprising us. If you have seen the show of from Patricia, that's the opposite of this here. Each time we make a show, it's a different issue. It's different. What is the object? It's already a question. Someone has raised the hand. Without a micro, we can't translate. We have never thought about a cybernetic attack that the hackers would finish with everything which is technology of communication, virtual communication, and everything in this way, to come back to a process of the man projecting its shadow on the wall. How, some way, you have things that are for always, for the future. We can't forget. We are generations that we have worked in the virtual and in the analogical one. And I think that this analogical world is still very rich, and we can't lose this from sight. I didn't understand very well the question. It's a joke. It's a provocation. With Alan, we are very near. We are very worried that the world was destroyed. What would tell the children? This is an important question, and a real one. What do we tell? And the show is going to finish, and if everything is in ruins, while we have objects to have fun, we are still going to be rich, but we are not. We can't close the the things, because it's advertisement. Has never been less conflicts in the world than today. You have more. When you say that, when this thing is told us, and that's why I talk about a real tool of advertisement, this of propaganda. I want to link the propaganda that you have in 1914, that took us to millions of deaths. And today I question myself, what do we tell? This is the real issue. What do we tell? Is it a satisfying answer? I doubt. I don't trust what they tell me. there is a book about the violence that says that the world has never been so with so few violence like today. But what is told to me, what we tell to the others, it prevents us to act. The show demonstrate that we used to lose our arms. We were without movement, but I want to refuse that. And overall, I see children, and I think, what are we going to tell them? And with Alan, we always have this concern, this tendency to, as everyone has a little bit of this, to not to trust the word is out that the world is not so fun. This is true. But you could, have you seen the drone? And actually, the images are filmed by a drone, but the actors are real. They are real actors on stage. In the wall of images, these 8 squares that they make that are the cameras. That's the camera, the drones, and that's the drone that shots. This kind of image dramaturgy that we use. Eu gostaria de agradecer, e a minha pergunta, eu não entendi muito bem, mas quando você faz uma projeção do corpo da marionete, eu não entendi muito bem. Isso está indo como um drone, um ator que atua sobre o marionete. Eu não entendi muito bem. Eu preciso de mais explicação, porque me abriu muitas possibilidades diferentes e foi muito interessante, mas eu não pude entender. Eu queria aprender, e qual seria a possibilidade de aprendizagem? De onde é que... I will answer with provocation as well. If someone has told me, technically it's extraordinary, I would take this as a terrible demonstration of know-how. When the body of the puppet trembles, that's what I went for, what I dreamed. This system is also used in dancing with the projection over bodies. And we do several shows that I have watched as well. It's a black cloud that is near the dancers, and in order to learn that, it's necessary to go to schools, universities, necessary to try to have experiences. And it is going to be necessary seriously to start to work with developers, with people that dominate these tools, these techniques of information. Huh? computer science. Thank you very much. I only would like to know if you knew Denis Marlowe, which is a Canadian. I was very surprised that the Canada makes so much theater. It makes lots of projections with images, and I would like to know if it's the same thing or there's some completely different. Which is the difference between the two modalities of doing? We have put ourselves this question when we watch the show of Denis Marlowe, and there is a phantom presence, and that was not what I was looking for. In a certain moment, I asked myself if the projections were made from the interior part, and I insisted that they would do from the exterior because there is nothing one related to it. I didn't want to have phantoms on the stage. I don't like. I, and that's what I try to explain about hallucination. Hallucination is not a phantom. I I have a question. Eu sempre tive um conflito muito grande. Podemos incorporar um treinamento na formação de jovens artistas de moralidade. Podemos treinar a necessidade de ser responsável e dizer algo quando você vai para o palco. Nós temos o direito de fazer isso no treinamento e são conflitos que eu pessoalmente tenho, porque eu acredito fortemente que o teatro deve dizer algo para a audiência contemporânea e nós temos o direito de treinar essa ideia que você precisa dizer algo importante e o que nós treinamos eles para dizer. Agora a problem with the translation. Is it a true question? It's a very important one. Nós estamos. I would have the sensation to be a failure, to not have performed my work well, if my work was not recognized in the work of people from that I am familiar with, that I go with. It means that when we question ourselves, we should take we should have time to find the answers about experimentation. It's not something that is just fashionable. It's a question that is put for everyone. Nobody has time. In France, we don't have time. But the question, for instance, of knowing if you have dealt with everything that was necessary to deal, if you took care of this and that, to know what corresponds to what you wanted to say with that, it's clear. My satisfactory is my answer is satisfactory or not. I put the question as a provocation. Quais são as técnicas nós nos costumávamos treinar? E nós temos o direito e a responsabilidade de ensiná-los moral, de ensiná-los como ser humanos, e nós temos uma responsabilidade cada vez que a gente pisa no palco, uma responsabilidade com a audiência, com o público espectador, que a gente traga essa moralidade pessoal. Isso é o meu conflito e não tem resposta para isso. Eu não acho que você possa me dar uma resposta. E isso é uma questão para todos que fazem teatro, que você tem que achar isso. There is a responsibility when, at least in France, it is necessary to share from the moment that people step on a stage on France, and sometimes they receive public money, and this is it's an ethical position. We can't, therefore, we can't do anything. I have always been moved, and it's necessary to to have this emotion to go to a stage. I've always moved to take the word, to assume risks, and I prefer uh, a bad show that tells me something, that defends something, that a very well done show that doesn't say anything, and everyone agrees with that. What does it mean? It is not a conflict. It's not a conflict. The only conflict would be the one to have too much authority, because the position of a professor, of a teacher, it's something odd. At least that's the way I face things. I would like at least to understand your work of professor, your pedagogy of dramaturgy is the one that you teach, is the same that you use in the scene. If there is a continuity, is it possible to work the same process? Could you explain us that? That's why that I make a bridge between both. I don't have the impression of changing my way of doing things. The only difference is in relation to the scene is there. I take the decisions, and there is a team, and it's necessary to consider that everyone is at the same on the same boat. But we are in the same position. That is the one that I was explaining, to be at the same time outside. And I'm going to tell a story that the first time that I made a small scene, I had an idea of doing a scenography, and after 3 days of rehearsal, it was not possible. And I realized that I make the actors, they rehearse and rehearse again, poor them, but I didn't have ideas anymore. And then I took the train. No, but you need to find a way. And then I come back with the idea that took to the show. But effectively, you are right. The position is the same. And I hope to have answered your question with that, because the reading, the understanding, and what we give back to the people who are on the stage, who are beside you, the director is beside when I talk to him, or the actors in the laboratory. When there you have these people, it's okay. The task is executed, but well, that's it. Did I answer part of it? Well, sorry. Tomorrow.